And welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. The leaders of the U.S., Canada, and Mexico are in Washington today for the 2026 World Cup final draw, a major milestone for the first 48-team tournament. The suspect in the Washington, D.C. pipe bomb case making his first court appearance today. Federal investigators announcing a major breakthrough following his arrest. What we're learning. The Supreme Court rules that Texas is allowed to use its newly drawn congressional map. This could give Republicans an edge in the midterms. Plus, Florida is the latest to draw its own map. Netflix has agreed to buy Warner Bros. Discovery's television streaming business, bringing two of the industry's biggest players in film and TV, possibly under one roof.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today is Friday, December 5th. I'm Paul Graney. Great to have you here. A major vote today by a federal vaccine advisory committee. Experts voting to recommend federal officials stop directing parents to get their infants quickly vaccinated against Hep B unless the baby's mothers test positive for the virus. Experts in the Advisory Committee on the Immunization Practices, known as ACIP, were selected by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. A majority of the committee said CDC should update its recommendations because the safety and effectiveness data for the current recommendations are inadequate. The current guidance advises a dose within 24 hours of birth for all medically stable infants whose weigh at least 4.4 pounds, plus follow-up shots to be given at about 1 month and 6 months. The committee was considering whether to recommend the birth dose only for babies whose mothers test positive. For other babies, it will be up to the parents and their doctors to decide if a birth dose is appropriate. And President Trump today announcing he has approved the manufacturing of tiny cars here in the United States. Tiny cars are popular in many countries with dense cities and high fuel costs. And in a Truth Social post, Trump wrote that manufacturers have long wanted to do this, similar to other countries. Trump said these vehicles can be powered by gasoline, electric, or hybrid technology. He described them as inexpensive, safe, fuel-efficient, and urged manufacturers to start building them immediately. Trump thanked the Department of Justice, Department of Transportation, and the Department of Environment for their role in the approval. The president didn't give details about regulatory changes, timelines, or which automakers are involved.
If you go to Japan, where I just left, and if you go to South Korea and Malaysia and other countries, they have a very small car, sort of like the Beetle used to be with the Volkswagen. They're very small, they're really cute. And I said, how would that do in this country? And everyone seems to think good, but you're not allowed to build them. And I've authorized the secretary to immediately approve the production of those cars.
And we'll keep you updated on that. And Netflix expanding its reach. The streaming giant has struck a deal today with Warner Bros. Discovery to buy the Hollywood giant studio and streaming business. The total price tag is $72 billion plus debt. The acquisition would bring two of the industry's biggest players in film and TV under one roof. Warner Bros. Discovery owns HBO television network, HBO Max streaming platform, and DC Studios. Is now splitting the company into a pair of publicly traded halves. Once that's finalized, Netflix will take the Warner section, while the other half, named Discovery Global, will keep its cable channels, including CNN. The combination of Netflix, HBO, and Warner Bros. Will need a deep regulatory review in several countries, including here in America. And the leaders of the three nations hosting the 2026 FIFA World Cup, the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, are set to meet in Washington, D.C. today for the tournament's final draw. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the event that will be held at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts.
President Trump, Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum, and Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney have all confirmed they'll attend the final draw. The draw will reveal the makeup of the 12 groups of 4 teams in what will be the first 48-team World Cup, marking a major milestone for the sport. The FIFA World Trophy has arrived in Washington, D.C., touring some of the United States Capitol's most iconic sites ahead of the much-anticipated final draw. Former England football team captain and host of FIFA World Cup draw ceremony Rio Ferdinand called the draw a huge moment.
As a fan, I sit there and watch these events all the time because I want to see where my country is going to be placed through this first game.
A stellar lineup of draw assistants, Tom Brady, Wayne Gretzky, Aaron Judge, and Shaquille O'Neal, will join the proceedings. Special guest Eli Manning is the event's red carpet host. Major League Soccer Commissioner Don Garber said the arrival of elite players such as Lionel Messi has helped the sport cement its place in a crowded U.S. market.
Now, soccer is the second favorite sport to watch here in the United States among people under the age of 40, behind only American football.
Among the teams making their World Cup bows are Cape Verde, Uzbekistan, Jordan, and Curaçao, the smallest country ever to participate with a population of only 150,000. FIFA is weighing the introduction of new refereeing technologies, including a referee body camera system.
Where you could really feel you're part of it and you can really see what the referee saw in that special moment.
As the World Cup draws near, anticipation is building among fans.
I'm excited, but by the same token, I don't know if I'll make it to a match or not. It's kind of expensive.
Yeah, so I've been watching soccer since I was a kid with my dad, and now I've been watching soccer. My husband plays soccer here in America.
It is the winner's trophy.
President Trump praised FIFA President Gianni Infantino yesterday.
Congratulations, you've done a fantastic job. A great leader in sports and a great gentleman. Thank you very much, Johnny.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says he expects travel to be seamless for the World Cup this summer.
But almost more important than that, as our fans go to the games, we need to make sure that we have enough beer and hot dogs. And it's our motor carriers that make sure that we are well stocked with all of the accoutrements for an enjoyable game.
The 2026 World Cup will take place from June 11th to July 19th across 16 cities in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, marking the largest edition in the tournament's history. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And during today's event, FIFA will introduce a new annual award known as the FIFA Peace Prize. Football Unites the World. We'll keep you updated. President Trump will be among the contenders. The governing body of soccer said the award was established to, quote, reward individuals who have taken exceptional and extraordinary actions for peace. And the man suspected of planting pipe bombs in Washington, D.C. the night before January 6th in 2021 is due to make his first court appearance today. The Virginian man Brian Cole will appear in a D.C. federal court to face 2 explosives-related charges. The charges carry a potential sentence of up to 20 years in prison. NTD's David Lamb has more on his arrest just yesterday.
FBI agents arrested Brian Cole Jr. and raided his home on Thursday morning in Woodbridge, Virginia. Officials identified Cole as the suspect in the pipe bombing attempt in Washington, D.C. on the eve of the events of January 6, 2021. He's charged with transportation of an explosive device in interstate commerce and attempted destruction with explosive material.
You're not going to walk into our capital city, put down 2 explosive devices, and walk off in the sunset. Not going to happen. We were going to track this person to the end of the earth. There was no way he was getting away.
On January 5th, 2021, pipe bombs were placed outside the office of the Democratic National Committee, as well as near the headquarters of the Republican National Committee. Surveillance footage showed a person wearing a hooded sweatshirt and face mask, but no arrests had been made for nearly 5 years.
Brought in a new team of investigators and experts, re-examined every piece of evidence, sifted through all the data, something that the prior administration refused and failed to do. As a result of that, we generated numerous investigative leads.
Investigators searched through more than 3 million lines of information, traced sales of materials that could have been used to make the bombs, and reviewed cell phone tower data to find the suspect.
There was no new tip. There was no new witness. Just good, diligent police work and prosecutorial work.
On January 6, 2021, law enforcement found the 2 bombs as Congress convened in the Capitol to certify the results of the 2020 presidential election between President Trump and then-candidate Joe Biden. Neither of the bombs had detonated. The Bureau had offered a $500,000 reward for information in the case. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino said that after he and Director Kash Patel took office early this year, they evaluated a number of high-profile cases and decided to push additional resources to the pipe bomb investigation.
We have seen in this case an incredible collaboration around the clock, in the middle of the night. It doesn't matter. We call each other, we make contact, they need a warrant, they need something, someone wants legal advice. These are the men and women who never give it up. And this case is big.
As the case is active and ongoing, officials have not yet revealed a motive. David Lamb, NTD News.
Now, federal investigators have quietly filed a criminal complaint revealing how credit card and bank data helped them zero in on the pipe bomb suspect. It outlines years of purchases that the FBI says match the components used in the explosive devices that were placed outside the headquarters of the Republican and Democratic National Committees. Agents say suspect Brian Cole Jr. continued buying bomb-making materials even after the devices were discovered on January 6th. Investigators also tracked Cole's cell phone, placing it near both parties' headquarters during the same window the suspected bomber appeared on video. The charging documents say surveillance footage shows one individual planting both devices within minutes of each other on the night of January 5th. But despite the new details, authorities say they still aren't disclosing any evidence pointing to a motive. And as New York Governor Kathy Hochul prepares for next year's re-election campaign, her former Deputy Chief of Staff and go-to person for all things China, Linda Sun, is sitting through a weeks-long criminal trial. The U.S. government accuses Sun of acting on behalf of China in exchange for massive financial kickbacks. Prosecutors say messages between Sun and CCP-linked individuals show her bragging about arranging Governor Hochul's schedule to benefit Beijing. She also called China her native home in messages with the Chinese consulate in New York. NTD's Flora Hua has more.
Over the course of Linda Sun's 3-week trial, prosecutors have sought to convince the jury that Sun and her husband enriched themselves by doing Beijing's bidding. That as Sun was working as a high-ranking aide to former Governor Andrew Cuomo and later Governor Kathy Hochul. In the Hochul administration, Sun was Deputy Chief of Staff and a senior advisor on Asian-related affairs. During the trial, court-verified chat histories between Sun and the Chinese consulate in New York show that Chinese diplomats repeatedly asked Sun to arrange then-Governor Cuomo to visit China and attend Chinese events in New York. Sun responded that then-Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul was, quote, more obedient than Cuomo, and Sun could control Hochul's schedule. Messages also show how Sun told then-Chinese Consul General Huang Ping that she coerced the governor's speechwriter to remove a section on the Uyghur situation in China. The U.S. government has accused Beijing of persecuting this ethnic minority group using forced labor. In the messages, Sun called China her native country more than once and said she can help her native country do more things. But it appears Sun behaved differently towards Taiwan. Court evidence, including digital records and government employees' testimony, indicate Sun turned down almost all requests from Taiwanese officials to meet with the New York governor. She also blocked a dinner invitation from former Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen to Cuomo. Beijing strongly opposes any official interactions between the U.S. and Taiwan. Justin Yu, a New York district leader, told us that Sun's case shows how a mid-level official can influence high-level exchanges between Tsai and Cuomo simply by blocking information. Other chat records show a Beijing-linked Chinese businessman directing Sun to arrange Hochul to visit China and to invite Chinese official delegations to New York. Sun managed to deliver on many of his requests. More strikingly, Sun allegedly forged a Hoku's signature on Chinese officials' travel documents. Sun's efforts didn't go unnoticed by Beijing. Government evidence shows that Sun was appointed to be the chairperson of a Beijing-funded organization. She was also invited to high-level meetings the CCP arranged in Beijing for what it called overseas Chinese patriots. At one meeting, over 80 people from 45 countries gathered in Beijing. This is one way the CCP uses to influence overseas Chinese elites to advance its own agenda on the global stage. Flora Hua, NTD News.
And the Linda Sun trial shows how the Chinese regime seeks to exert its control outside of its borders and around the world. With us now is a man who is suffering under that agenda. Yongdong Tenzin is a Tibetan bravely standing up to the CCP that's despite sanctions, death threats, and great personal loss. He's been targeted by the regime despite the fact that he lives all the way on the other side of the planet in Canada. Yongdong, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Sir, you've been forced to cut off your contact with your family in Tibet. Why?
Thank you, Paul, for having me on the show today. So I'm Tibetan Canadian citizen here in Canada, but my story is a living proof how China's transnational repression is richest here in Canada. So I was born in Tibet that has been illegally occupied by China, and Tibetan people repressed by China over 7 decades. So China does not want the world to know what is happening inside Tibet. For myself, when I was 11 years old, I came in exile by crossing the Himalayan mountains to seek freedom. And since then, I haven't seen my parents for more than 25 years. And today I'm speaking as a Tibetan Canadian who has experienced China's transnational repression in firsthand, not in Lhasa, Tibet, not in Beijing, but here in Canada. So China sanctioned me because they want to suppress my voice. I have been working in Canada advocating human rights and freedom for Tibetans because inside Tibet, across Tibet, Tibetan scholars, writers, singers, and environmental activists and language advocates were detained and disappeared. So China wants to suppress not only Tibetans, Uyghur, Hong and Chinese democratic community abroad because they don't want the world to see what is happening at ground reality.
Yongdong, how much extra pressure did they start putting on your family after they learned about your peaceful activism?
Yes, so I'm just ordinary Canadian citizen. I just advocate for human rights and freedom in Canada. However, I was sanctioned on 23rd December 2024 by Chinese government, along with 19 Canadian citizens who are associated with Canada-Tibet Committee and Uyghur Human Rights Project. So this sanction was not a symbolic, it was a direct attempt to repress my voice. So after sanction, I have been receiving death threat and was intimidations across social media. For one horrific incident, I received a message from a claiming Chinese consulate officer based in Pakistan that they threatened my families in Tibet if I do not stop my advocacy work in Canada. They sent me information in detail about my relatives. That was horrific. That was most horrific experience ever had in my life. But instead of fear, their sanction provided me clarity that my voice in Canada matters. I speak for truth for Tibet and human rights, which has been very powerful, threatening government like China. So their intimidation was to repress myself, but it strengthened me, my determination, my courage to speak up, to continue advocacy for Tibet. But I had the most difficult, most painful decision that I disconnected from my family in Tibet to protect them, and also sacrifices my relation to continue to advocacy for Tibet, because I know that more than 160 Tibetans have immolated. They call return of His Holiness Dalai Lama. They call freedom for Tibet. They call independence for Tibet. So it's my moral responsibility and my moral obligation to stand up for them.
So Yundong, you cut off contact with your family. You were afraid for their safety after the embassy sent you their contact details to warn you, we know where your family are. Obviously, you said it was the most heartbreaking moment in your life. But for you personally, last year before you spoke at the International Criminal Court at The Hague in the genocide case against Xi Jinping very bravely, you got death threats, but you went ahead with it anyway and gave your testimony. Why? You knew the regime was bluffing?
Yes, because the Tibetans inside Tibet, especially the younger generations, they are working hard for the Tibetan cause. And Tibetans inside Tibet, they were repressed. For example, a young Tibetan singer, very popular Tibetan singer, in July 2025, he sang a song in honoring the 90th birthday of His Holiness Dalai Lama. But he was disappeared. He was detained. He was repressed. His one-year-old child and his wife left alone without answer, without injustice. So just imagine if it happened with anyone, Canadian or American artist or singer. So how the world will react. So this is sad reality in Tibet. And also over 1 million Tibetan children, especially some of them are 5 years old, were forced in Chinese boarding school. They are separate from parents, banning Tibetan language. So Chinese try to eradicate the Tibetan identity and culture. So now Tibetan is facing the most intense repression since 90s, the very existence of Tibetan people and identity and our culture. So that's why it's my responsibility to stand up against China. So I went to the Hague to attend and testify in genocide case against President Xi Jinping, despite I was threatened because Tibetans have sacrificed their precious life. It's my responsibility.
It's very noble and very brave of you. And I think what the regime has been doing in Tibet now for decades is just unacceptable and just terrible. And to think here, now, what you're talking about in Canada and here in the States, we've been reporting on the tactics the regime has been using against other groups like the Falun Gong, Shenyun Performing Arts. It's very sophisticated. This isn't something that's disorganized. They're using legal warfare, propaganda, and just like in your case, threats and actual violence. It's just incredible. Were you surprised when the CCP's transnational repression arrived at your door in Canada?
Yes, I was shocked because I just came to Canada to seek the freedom, So I thought I can advocate for human rights and freedom because which is within the Canadian values and within the Canadian rules law. I was really shocked. But now Canada openly acknowledge and recognize that China engaged in foreign interference and transnational repression on Canada's soil. It was widely reported that Chinese authorities in Canada, they are operating so-called police stations. And also it's widely reported that some of elected representatives, member of parliament in Canada, were influenced by Chinese authority. But as public, we do not know who are them. And also for Tibetans, Hong Kongs, Uyghurs, and Chinese democratic communities in Canada, transnational repression is daily reality, including like massive civilians and community event, and also at the protested and was online threatened, and also pressure on family back home. So it's not only intimidate and individual communities, but also it's undermined the Canadian democratic system. So, however, in 2024, Canadian Parliament has passed a Bill C-17 to counter the foreign interference and transnational repression, but government of Canada has failed to implement it. For example, one example, why has the foreign interference transparency registry has not established? Why the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, not to prioritize foreign interference and transnational repression in the discussion with President Xi Jinping when he met him on 31st October 2025. So I demanded our Canadian government to implement Bill C-17 fully.
They should. Transnational repression, is very much a reality. And when Americans hear and Canadians hear that the CCP and these authoritarian regimes are doing things in their own countries they're disgusted, and they should be, and the governments, they should really make a stand to the regime and Xi Jinping, because for people like yourself and others who are targeted unfairly after coming here for safety and to try and get away from these regimes is terrible, and we do. Thank you for coming on and highlighting it. Yundong Tenzin, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks so much.
And lawmakers and experts stressing that keeping ahead of China in this space race is vital for economic and national security. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has more from a hearing held on Capitol Hill.
The question we should be asking as we explore beyond the planet is, will humanity carry forward the American values of economic and political freedom, or those of the Chinese Communist Party?
Of the House Space and Aeronautics Subcommittee expressed the importance for the U.S. to stay ahead of China with space exploration and technology.
The People's Republic of China, for which there is no distinction between civil and military space, knows that leadership in space has brought the United States invaluable geopolitical soft power, significant and beneficial international alliances, economic growth fueled by innovation.
Chairman Mike Herodopoulos says China's objective is not to just keep up with the U.S., but to outpace, outmaneuver, and ultimately defeat the U.S.
But America is not standing still. In my district, Kennedy Space Center, we surpassed 100 launchers just 2 weeks ago. China is not even close, with around 73 launches. Still, Beijing is pressing ahead. Their plans include landing their astronauts on the lunar surface by 2030 and constructing research base on the moon's south pole by 2035.
Subcommittee ranking member Valerie Fushi says that how the U.S. navigates China's ascending space capabilities today has an impact on every American.
Our banking, communications, weather prediction, agriculture, natural resource management, and national security, for example, all rely on space systems.
One expert witness says that space, from the Chinese Communist Party's view, boosts all parts of China's national power.
Military, economic, diplomatic, political, scientific and technological, even cultural.
Other experts shared their thoughts and recommendations.
We have many advantages over the PRC, structural advantages that we can use to maintain our edge. But to do so, we need to start running.
We are engaged not so much in a space race, but a long-term, broad strategic competition.
Every new space technology, skill, and industrial capacity acquired by the PRC will be used to provide the People's Liberation Army a battlefield advantage, as well as power civilian and commercial innovation and economic growth.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
And Republicans have a better chance to pick up 5 congressional seats in Texas during the midterms. That's after the Supreme Court okayed the state's new map. Florida is the next to act in a domino of redistricting around the nation. NTD's Melina Weiskup has the details.
The midterms are looking more favorable to Republicans in Texas after the nation's highest court approved the Republicans' new map. GOP candidates will now have a better opportunity to flip Democrat seats in 5 districts. The Supreme Court ruled against a lower court that tried to block the map. Justices stated that the lower court violated the rules.
Effectively, the Supreme Court has indicated that states have free rein in situations like this, and that
the 5 potential gains in Texas could be offset by the 5 potential gains in California after voters approved a new map favoring Democrats. Now another southern state is gearing up to draw a new map. Florida lawmakers met yesterday to start the process. Several other states are working through redistricting too, all in a chain reaction to what started in Texas.
This is not going to be the last redistricting case brought to the Supreme Court. Other states will be challenged too.
Meanwhile, the Supreme Court is still weighing a major Voting Rights Act case. The ruling could cause further shakeups to the nationwide battle for control of Congress. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
And a federal grand jury has decided not to indict New York Attorney General Letitia James. This was the second time a grand jury has weighed charges against James. Back in October, the Justice Department secured an indictment against her on charges of bank fraud and making false statements on a loan application. But last month, a federal judge tossed out the charges, saying President Trump unlawfully appointed the prosecutor, Lindsay Halligan, as an interim U.S. attorney. The case centers around a property James bought in Virginia. She's denied any wrongdoing. So far, no comment from the Justice Department either. And it's unclear if prosecutors might try to indict her a third time. And a planned day of testimony in the murder case against Luigi Mangione was suddenly cancelled today after court officials said the defendant was sick. The cancellation paused a week-long evidentiary hearing that has focused on whether key statements and physical evidence will be allowed at trial. Attorneys were expected to continue debating whether Altoona, Pennsylvania police lawfully questioned Mangione and searched his backpack during his arrest. The hearing, already expected to stretch into next week, will resume at a later date. Court officials didn't elaborate on Mangione's condition, though. And actor and producer Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa has died. His spokesperson confirmed he died Thursday in Santa Barbara, California, due to complications from a stroke. Tagawa was born in Tokyo. He was best known for his iconic role as villain Shang Tsung in multiple Mortal Kombat franchise projects. His career also included roles in films like Pearl Harbor, Planet of the Apes, and Memoirs of a Geisha. Tagawa was 75 years old. And police in Kerrville, Texas have released hours of 9/11 calls from the early morning of July 4th. That's when catastrophic floods swept across Texas Hill Country. Police warned that the call recordings could be disturbing, particularly for families affected by the floods.
First of all, I'd like to share that the information about to be released will be difficult for some families and those impacted by the flood to hear. We want to caution the public that what you will hear on these calls is distressing. Some callers did not survive. We ask that you keep them and their family members, loved ones, and friends in your thoughts and prayers.
Devastating flooding struck in the hours of July 4th, 136 people losing their lives. More than 100 victims died in Kerr County. The police chief said only 2 dispatchers were on duty when calls began flooding in. They handled a total of 435 calls in 6 hours. Among the dead, 25 girls, 2 counselors who Camp Mystic. It's an all-girls Christian camp along the river. Last month, families of more than a dozen victims filed lawsuits against the camp and its owners. And President Trump is now attending the final 2026 World Cup draw. We're going to tune in.
You're blocking the pool.
I think the crowd is great, and I think the building is great. We've made a lot of improvements over the last 6 months. Taking Kennedy Center was in very bad shape. Now it's getting to be really good, and in 6 months it's going to be incredible. The improvements we've made.
First time for the U.S. to host since the 90s.
Right.
You ready for it?
I'm ready for it, and they're ready for it. And Johnny, who
Yes.
you know, has done a fantastic job with FIFA. And we're looking to have, we have already set records with ticket sales. I don't think there's ever been anything like it in any sport. And so I want to congratulate you. I don't even have to wait. But major records have been set. How are you?
Good.
Nice to see you.
Today is not football, American football. It's soccer. It's
Right.
a big event.
That's
soccer.
right,
But
that's
can you
right.
tell me about this? Big day.
It's
today.
just a big day, and it's a great sport. And it really is coming to America, and nobody ever thought a thing like this could happen. And I'm very happy to say that we've already set the all-time record on ticket sales long before the first ball is kicked, right?
100%.
You've had some concerns about crime in American cities. Some of the cities that'll be hosting, have they remedied that for you, or are you still considering maybe asking FIFA to move some of those cities?
No, I don't want to do that, but I will tell you, if they do have a problem, by the time we get there, we'll take care of that problem. We can solve that problem. I've proven that in D.C. and everywhere else we went, so we'll take care of that very easily. So if they have a problem, hopefully they'll let us know that, and we will solve any problem. Okay, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, appreciate it.
President, Brazilian television. America will be hosting the World Cup and the Olympics in 2 years. How important it is?
Yeah, so obviously a lot of anticipation for what today is. You got a lot of big names here, not
We've set every record on
the Mexican president here as well, the Prime Minister of Canada. Both of those countries are also hosting World Cup games. But wanted to ask Brazil that World Champion here in 1994 American cities.
Not only that, I got to see a man named Pelé play. That tells you how old I am. He was on the Cosmos. You remember that a long time ago, and it was quite a treat.
Maybe ask you big event, and he was say it right there that if there are issues, still get it handled. They want to keep the games where they are.
So
a lot of other people
that got to see Pelé,
we've seen.
and I assume he's one of you all
You have some favorite line. This is the first time that the U.S.
Well, I have to favor just the USA. I don't know what their chances are, John. The USA is
getting better and better, actually. They're getting better and better.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So you hear the excitement from the president. You talk about.
And that was President Trump at the Kennedy Center. The upcoming FIFA World Cup draw is happening later this afternoon. He was there with FIFA President Gianni Infantino. We'll keep you up to date on who the U.S. draws in the World Cup for next year. And still to come, the European Commission imposes a $140 million fine on Elon Musk's X, citing breaches of the bloc's digital regulations. And Russian President Vladimir Putin says Russia is ready to provide uninterrupted fuel to India as both leaders sign agreements to boost trade and cooperation after the break. I'm Paul Greaney. This is World Watch. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Moscow is ready to provide uninterrupted fuel supplies for India. Putin met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi today and signed many agreements.
As you saw, a substantial package of agreements between governments, agencies, and corporations has been signed. Many of them are aimed at expanding economic cooperation between Russia and India.
Now, Putin is on his first visit to India in 4 years. He aims to boost trade with the top buyer of Russian arms and seaborne oil. This as Western sanctions squeeze their decades-old ties. The visit comes as India is engaged in talks with the U.S. for a new trade deal. New Delhi seeks to cut punitive tariffs imposed by President Trump over India's Russian oil purchases. The two leaders say that bilateral trade will reach $100 billion before the target of 2030. And French President Emmanuel Macron said unity between Europe and the United States was key in the support of Ukraine. German magazine Spiegel earlier reported that the French president and German chancellor have voiced severe skepticism about U.S. efforts to end the war in Ukraine. Macron made the comment during his 3-day visit to China.
Unity
between Americans and Europeans on the Ukrainian issue is essential.
We
welcome and support the peace efforts being made by the United States of America. The United States of America needs Europeans to lead these peace efforts.
And moving on, the organizers of the Eurovision Song Contest have confirmed Israel will be allowed to participate in next year's competition. The group rejected calls from several European broadcasters to bar the country over the Gaza conflict. At least 4 countries, including Spain and Ireland, withdrew from the competition following the decision. European Broadcasting Union says its members voted to support new reforms rather than voting on Israel's eligibility. The union says the outcome reflected members' commitment to safeguarding the credibility of the competition. And in other news, the European Union today fining Elon Musk's social media platform X $140 million for breaching the bloc's content rules. The bloc said the breaches could leave users exposed to scams and manipulation. FCC Chairman Brendan Carr denounced the EU's fine, saying, quote, Europe is taxing Americans to subsidize a continent held back by Europe's own suffocating regulations. The European Commission issued the decision under the bloc's Digital Services Act, known as the DSA. Now, it's the first time that the EU has issued a so-called non-compliance decision since rolling out the DSA a couple of years back.
X has indeed breached its transparency obligation under the DSA. This includes X's blue checkmark. It deceives users. Anyone can pay to obtain the verified status, and X does not meaningfully verify who is behind it. It also includes X advertising repository, which does not work properly, and X doesn't provide effective data access for researchers.
In other news, a UK public inquiry released a report yesterday on the Novichok nerve agent attack on Russian double agent Sergei Skripal in 2018. It concluded that Russian President Vladimir Putin must have ordered the attack in a reckless display of power. The attack led to the death of an innocent woman. Here are the details.
I've concluded that the operation to assassinate Sergei Skripal must have been authorized at the highest level. Indeed by President Putin.
That was the conclusion on Thursday of a UK inquiry into the 2018 Novichok poisoning of former Russian double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia. Inquiry Chair Anthony Hughes described the attempted assassination, which led to the death of British woman Dawn Sturgis, as an astonishingly reckless act. The Skripals were found slumped unconscious on a public bench in the southern English city of Salisbury in March 2018. That's after Novichok was applied to the front door handle of Sergei's nearby home. British mother Dawn Sturgis died from exposure to the poison 4 months later. Her partner found a counterfeit perfume bottle, which Russian spies had used to smuggle the military-grade nerve agent into the country, the inquiry said. It was told the contaminated perfume bottle contained enough poison to kill thousands of people. The Skripals and a police officer who went to Skripal's house were left critically ill from its effects but recovered. With the inquiry concluding Russian President Vladimir Putin authorised the attack, Britain announced new sanctions against Moscow. This included the entire GRU military intelligence agency, whose officers were singled out in the inquiry as the Skripals' would-be assassins. Hughes said the evidence that this was a Russian state attack was overwhelming.
There is a direct causal link between the actions of all those individuals and Dawn Sturgis's death. And they, and only they, bear moral responsibility.
Russia has always denied any involvement, as have those accused of carrying the poison, casting the accusations as anti-Russian propaganda. The Russian embassy in London did not respond immediately to a request for comment.
And an elderly Falun Gong practitioner in Sydney was left bloodied after being struck in the face with a glass bottle amid growing concerns that the Chinese regime's repression is spreading overseas. Police say a man attacked 2 practitioners of Falun Gong during their morning exercises in a park and later assaulted a police officer. The attack follows a series of violent and threatening incidents, including bomb and mass shooting threats that forced the cancellation of a planned documentary screening. There have also been reports that practitioners in Australia's capital city, Canberra, were pushed and hit by a pro-Beijing group during a Chinese official's visit. Falun Gong combines meditation with moral teachings based on truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, and has long faced running persecution campaign by the Chinese Communist Party since 1999. That's pressure that practitioners say is increasingly spilling beyond China's borders. And still to come. In Brazil, Santa pulls up to the famous Copacabana beach, not behind his team of trusty reindeer, but on a high-powered jet ski, ready to bring the holidays cheer to kids on shore. Welcome back. I'm Paul Graney. A Christmas tree for Norway was lit up in London's Trafalgar Square last night. It was part of a British tradition with roots in the Norwegian forest.
3, 2, 1.
The annual lighting ceremony, known as Britain's National Tree Show, highlights the history of the two countries' alliance. It signals the start of London's countdown to Christmas and is traditionally held on the first Thursday in December. Strings of lights hang vertically, following the Norwegian tradition, and the tree will remain in the square until January 5th, also known as the 12th night of Christmas. It will then be taken down to be chipped and composted. And in the North Pole, Santa is usually pulled by his team of loyal reindeer. But in Brazil, he's traded his animals in for a jet ski. That's right. At Rio de Janeiro's Copacabana Beach, Old St. Nick arrived by a jet ski on a mission to bring joy to a crowd of children with different medical conditions.
We have children undergoing cancer treatment, children with neurological problems, autistic children, and we embrace all these children, and they don't see any difference. On this day, there is no difference. They play all day long as equals.
I loved it. For us, it's a way to get out of our routine, for her to play and interact. Because I live in a poor community, there's not much to do there. And where there's an opportunity like this, I don't let it pass. Isadora loves it.
The event was organised by the city's firefighters and local non-profits who helped give gifts and spread the festive cheer to dozens of children. The project aims to give children with cancer, disabilities and rare diseases an opportunity to take part in spreading Christmas cheer. And a remarkable rescue in Virginia. After two window washers were stranded 15 stories above ground, their scaffolding had a mechanical failure, leaving the basket hanging at a precarious angle off the side of this building. A rescue crew from the Fairfax County Fire Department was brought in to help. Rescue workers had to lower themselves down from the roof of the building using a rope system to retrieve the workers. It took 2 trips to get them back to ground safely. Thankfully, nobody was injured. And a baby fur seal was safely returned to the wild after wandering into a bar in Richmond, New Zealand, to startle customers and staff. Security camera footage showed the animal, initially mistaken for a dog, dashing under tables. The baby seal made its way into the bathroom as one customer tried to guide it out with his jersey. Bar owner said the seal stayed inside the pub for around 30 minutes, running up a tab, I'm sure. Was eventually lured into a dog cage with salmon pizza topping and returned to the wild by authorities. There you go. And if you have any feedback on the show or you have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at news.today@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. And for round-the-clock original news coverage, watch us live at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. We'll cover more news right after this break.